Do you know that our human brain processes 4,000 bytes per second in a calm state? But do you know when we get into an amped up or excited state, our brain processes 4 million bytes per second? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Stepping Stones to Your Success. This is Garland, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about critical management skills and the origin of that and how that came about. And believe it or not, our critical management skills came about as a result of me getting a ticket. It was a speeding ticket. I was going with the flow of the traffic, and sure enough, I was the one that got pulled over. Police officer says, "Do you understand why I pulled you over, sir?" And I says, "No, sir, I have no idea." And he says, "It's because you were speeding." Says, "But I was just going with the flow of the traffic." And he says, "Do you ever go fishing?" I says, "Yeah, I fish every once in a while." And he says, "Do you try and catch all the fish, or you just try and catch one?" And I said, "With all due respect, sir, that's a lousy analogy." I got my ticket, and I showed up on my day in court, and I was dressed for success, got my suit and tie, I got sat down with the DA, and he was sitting with me to see if I was interested in taking a plea bargain for a lesser charge. So I explained to him, I said, "I will pay any fine you want me to pay. I will do any class you want me to do, but I just need to walk out of this building with having 0 points on this ticket." And he looked at the ticket. He says, "Well, it's a 6-point ticket." I says, "Yes, sir, I know that." Then he looked at the computer, looked back at me and says, "I can drop it down to 2 points." And I said, "Sir, 0 points would be better." He looked back at his computer and then looked at me again. And he says, "I tell you what, if you pay a $300 fine, and you take a 2-day defensive driving course, I will put it down to 0. And I said, "Consider it done." We shook hands and it was a done deal. Now, I remember the day I showed up for that driving thing, it was on January the 19th on a Saturday. And it was 2 8-hour days. 1 hour was going to be classroom, and the other 7 hours were going to be on the road. Now, we had already put our oldest son through this training, so we kind of knew what was in store for. But I got to tell you, as the day unfolded, I was totally impressed with the information that was shared and how it was disseminated as well, because I understood the similarities that the instructor was using to get across his systems and processes, because it was much like what we do in the martial arts school with our systems and processes. You know, they talked about the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learning systems. They talk about psychomotor skills. They share the state of mind thing and behavioral traits and belief systems. They talk about thought, focus, and concentration. And they talked about how learning and applying what's called calm assertiveness. From a martial arts school owner's perspective, I've got to tell you, we are always looking for systems that are different than ours that we can apply, enhance, and take from. There's a couple of great concepts that came out of this training that I still remember to this day. Number one is, what they shared that we used right away is that you are going to learn some self-protection and leadership skills you ain't going to learn anyplace else. You need to thank your family for enrolling you in this program. One of the things that I really enjoyed learning was concerning psychomotor skills. Do you know that our human brain processes 4,000 bytes per second in a calm state? But do you know when we get into an amped up or excited state, our brain processes 4 million bytes per second. That's why at times it seems like things are moving in slow motion when we're in an excited state. The biggest light bulb that came on for me is when they started talking about the importance of developing our critical skills to be successful while driving. Now, with the average attendee in this class of 30 being in the age of 16 or younger, I could really relate to how the instructor broke it down and spoke in a language that they could understand. And perhaps this is what stimulated my own creative mind to think about how we could take these concepts and interweave them into the fabric of the culture of our martial arts school. Then I got to thinking, what if we created a system called critical management skills that we could share with our instructors and our up-and-coming instructors to set their students up for success? So I took the concepts that were bouncing around in my head and I started putting them to paper. And before I knew it, folks, we had 40 plus critical management skill topics. You know, some years back, our instructor, Grandmaster Buell, he sat all of his top students down and he says, "Look, I want you to learn what I've learned, but I need you to learn it in half the time." And I was fortunate enough to be one of those students, and that resonated with me, and I kind of internalized that and share it with my students now. So these critical management skills are quite simply an extension of what Grandmaster Buell instilled in us so many years ago. And now we get to share them with you. So thank you for tuning in, folks. I appreciate you being here. All the best to your family. Have a wonderful evening. I'll be back to you soon.